welcome to the Rebel's Edge. I'm Jon Najarian, Pete Najarian joining me in just a second, and we're going to break down for you the very bullish, non-inflationary CPI numbers that we got today. We'll do that, take a look at some sports and stocks on the Rebel's Edge. Bang!
I'd call this a pretty damn good day, John. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, just look at that spike as it occurred right at the beginning of the day, Pete.
Yeah.
I mean, the S&P 500 just shot up 85 points like that. The Dow Jones was up 600 like that. Mm-hmm. And the NASDAQ up over 300 and looking like it wants to push hard for 4. 2% rally out of the NASDAQ's not so bad, Pete. All we needed was little soft inflation numbers.
Yep, those soft inflation numbers, not so bad, as a matter of fact, right? I mean, give a pretty damn good lift. So we got plenty to cover here in the old macro minute. Let's get after it, huh?
Let's do it. Consumer Price Index for December showing that core price pressures eased more than expected. And as we just said, as soon as that happened, everything jumped to the upside. And if you were short, it was not fun. But if you were long, it was a great ride.
Long and strong, baby. Let me tell you something. We had enough of the indicators out there for us, John, with the unusual option activity. And let's not forget this. We talk about CPI, that the influence that has. It's obviously big. Why are we up as much as 600 plus points, though? I'll tell you why. Because the earnings came out. We talked about this yesterday in Fantastic Futures. And the financial earnings absolutely crushed it. I know we're going to be hitting that early on. I'll tell you what, it's absolutely incredible how well Goldman Sachs did, JP Morgan did, Wells Fargo did, BlackRock did, Citi did, all of them. I mean, all of them. New York Mellon. Take your pick on whatever you want. And oh, by the way, there's a heck of a lot more to come when it comes to these financials, but that's just the start of it today.
Yeah, that kicks off really the S&P 500, Pete. With the JP Morgan numbers. And as soon as they hit today, JP Morgan didn't even trade up on that, Pete. Not until basically they got the CPI numbers, and then it reversed. But it was down $2 or more after the earnings. That was a gift. Yeah. All right, Pete. I'd be remiss if I didn't throw in a macro extra. And Pete and I have talked about how as Biden exits, he wants to break things, apparently. So he and his idiot, Gary Gensler at the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, decided they need to sue Elon Musk. Why? Well, they said he misled shareholders and failed to timely disclose his Twitter share purchase. Pete, words can't describe how foolish that is and how the SEC has a lot bigger fish to fry. And yet this guy Gensler said, you know what? Throws the grenade into the room.
You know, they just did that deal the other day. I mean, right? I mean, the buyout of Twitter. I mean, shoot, what was that, a week ago or so? Not. Probably. I mean, what the hell? What in God's earth is this all about? I'll tell you, there's a lot of spike going on once we get to that transition. And when the captain of all Cheetos comes out there, I think he's going to address a lot of things, for sure.
The captain of all Cheetos, is that it?
The orange man.
Well, like Pete said, folks, that was April of 2022. So we are just 3 months away from that being 3 years ago. Unreal. And now, on their way out, the Biden administration and his idiot SEC chairman decide, yep, nothing better to do. Might as well go after Elon Musk. Unreal. Okay. Yeah. None of us think that's lawfare, do we, Pete? No. It's warfare with law. That's why it's called lawfare, folks. All right. Let's talk about Fantastic Futures. I'll hit it quick, Pete. 10-year was at 4.8% the last 2 days. Yeah, it was hovering, 4.78 and then move up to 4.8. Today, 4.66 on these soft inflation numbers, Pete.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, John. I mean, we've been talking about this 10-year and the fact that it's been just stair-stepping higher and higher and higher, and some of the big moves that it's made in a fairly short period of time. But yes, it's nice to see it kind of pulling back a little bit. Last I looked, it was around 4.6 something, 4.65 maybe, something like that, down about 3%. So I think that's good. How about this? The volatility index, which we talk about all the time, and I think it's is as important as anything out there as an indicator, hit 22 on Monday. You know where we are today? We got into the 16s. We're down about 10%. I mean, that is another big move. You might not realize how big a move it is for the 10-year on the drop, but that's a pretty good size move. And now when you look at the volatility index from 22 Monday to 16 today, I think that speaks volumes about where we are right now. And you know what? It creates a lot more opportunity for all of us.
Yes, it does. And Pete, I'm going to throw it right to the banks now because, like you said, top of the show, JP Morgan, boom. Citigroup, boom. And I know we're going to talk about the rest of them, but I just want to show you this quickly, folks, because yes, we had unusual activity in Citigroup. So Citigroup, letter C, there you see it. Stock was 71 bucks. That was just last Friday. So 71.68. Somebody steps in and buys 10,500 of the April 80 calls. What should you glean from that beyond the fact that, you know, it's making money? It's all the way out in April. So whoever bought those, and that's a million share equivalent, thinks that the stock keeps running towards April. They didn't just want a short term. They could have bought January calls for that. So options are great because they give you time frame, April, and they give you strike price or targets. And we just blew through the upside of anybody who actually got in at around 71, 72 bucks as the stock today, Pete, traded to the upside bigly.
And John, it's what we talk about all the time, the leverage of options. Why are options, the volumes going absolutely through the roof ever since you and I both got onto the trading floors, but especially over the last, call it maybe 6 or 8 years? I mean, right now in the month of January, we are averaging 57 million contracts per day. So yesterday actually felt a little bit quieter because we only traded 53 million contracts yesterday. But it's been an absolute something that everybody's moving, getting the knowledge, all of that. And that's why we at Market Rebellion do what we do. We love what we do. We love the leverage that you can get. And it is the growth part of what's going on in the stock market. No doubt about that. But in this case, we had JP Morgan. We certainly had some calls getting bought in there. We had Citi calls getting bought in there that you just highlighted. We had Wells Fargo. We had Goldman Sachs, all of them with some upside call buying. And even though Wells Fargo of all of them was the one that might have slipped a little bit, it isn't slipping in the reaction. But when you look at the revenues that they generated, that was something that wasn't a massive beat. But everything else, when you look at all these names, the earnings, they crushed it. The revenue, they crushed it. So this is a great time for these financials who are leading the markets. There's no doubt.
Yeah. And Citi, by the way, folks, traded through 79 just before we came on the show. So pretty big upside jump.
Yeah.
All right. Let's do another unusual activity, Pete. Another one, as DJ Khaled would say. How about this one? Quantum computing names. We caught them in December, Pete, and a couple of them were even before December. And they zoomed, some of them 400, 500% in a month. Well, then, as we said, and I emphasized it on television the last trading day of 2024, Pete, I said, you know, nothing goes straight up forever, folks. And sure enough, people were taking profits in the new year and they came back down. But how about this one? Rigetti, yesterday, as we were on the show, Pete, getting ready, the stock was 650. Today, where does it go? Over 10, went over 11 today. And where is it now? It's 1027, according to Jared's little chart there. So the Trading View chart. Fantastic performance, Pete. And folks, you want to get some trades like that? Sign up at Market Rebellion because we do it all day.
It's amazing. It's awesome. And John, it's interesting because it keeps us, because of what we do, what we're looking at, what we're seeing in unusual option activity oftentimes on a daily basis. But, you know, in the big scheme, the big picture of things, It used to be all about cloud, right? It was cloud, cloud, cloud. Then, hey, how about AI? AI. Anything to do with AI, everybody would slip it in there, right, on their earnings to talk about what they were doing. But quantum computing, that's where we are right now. Yes, we've had some ups and some downs. There's no doubt about that. And this latest recovery off of the pullback that it had, Rigetti absolutely explodes to the upside. It's amazing. The simultaneous calculations is stunning. That's what we're talking about here when we're talking about the quantum computing. And it's an amazing thing. And it's just one more part of the technology that we're seeing going into the future. So does it mean cloud's done? Absolutely not. Cloud is there, and it's still got a lot of growth in front of it. We obviously have a heck of a lot more to go with AI, but quantum is something that now is sort of the one that's out in front of everybody. So because of that, John, whether it's, Rigetti or whoever, this is an absolute must to understand it and see what's going on and see what people are looking for into the future. And some of these companies have plenty of room to the upside still.
Yeah, quantum computing names up double digits today, folks, because people are believing that, hey, if this is the next AI, which it is, then you want to be on board. But then there are some people who question, Pete, as Jared has on the screen, what if it's the next DeLorean? Something that looked really good, but didn't really pan out so well. I think it's the next AI. So on pullbacks, I would definitely be a buyer. All right, BlackRock, Pete. So what have they done? Well, they've pulled back on their DEI and ESG initiatives. And what else did they do, Pete? Well, they're seeing record client cash flowing in to BLK, Pete. And that helped them put up some, again, record revenue numbers, did it not?
Oh, God. You take a look at these revenue numbers, they absolutely crush it, John. Look at the earnings, too. They earned nearly $12. They were looking for $11.02. The revenue, $5.68 billion. That seems like a pretty nice number. That beat by a long shot. You look at what they've done as far as the inflows, you already mentioned it, at record levels, $641 billion in 2024. That's amazing. How about this? The assets. Now, I don't know how many people have really looked deep into this whole thing, but the assets that they've got is at 11.55, not million, not billion, but trillion. I mean, this is unbelievable, up 15% year over year. BlackRock is absolutely crushing it. And I think this year for them, it'll be probably one of their best years because of some of the different ways they're going to approach the markets. How about I say it that way? It's my nice way of saying they're kind of moving away from what they've talked about for the last 4 years or so. And now I think that's going to make them even wealthier going forward.
Yeah, maybe, gee, Pete, something's happening in just a couple days. I'm not sure what it is, but something's happening.
It's not far away.
Maybe that's why people are getting so bullish and all bulled up over about BlackRock too. Mm-hmm. All right, Goldman Sachs, let's wind it up with that one, Pete. Stock moves higher, reported strong Q4 performance. Net revenue, well, it was just shy of $14 billion, Pete. That exceeded the consensus of 12.37 by a lot. So these guys pretty much hitting on all cylinders here as well, Pete.
Yeah, the quarterly earnings growth. I mean, there's nothing you could look at and not say this one, I think, is the king today, at least, John. When you look at Goldman Sachs, what they accomplished versus JP Morgan, versus Citi, even versus BlackRock, you name it. They were looking for $8.12 when it comes to earnings, John. They only put up a number very close to 12. And then you look at the revenue that you brought up, $13.8 billion. That's a big number. They were looking for a little over $12 billion. The growth in investment banking, and that's what the key is, folks. John knows it. I'm reiterating what he was talking about, but investment banking. Now, that's up 24% for Goldman Sachs. This is not a new company. This is a company that's been around for a little while. To have that kind of growth is absolutely staggering. And every number that I looked at makes a lot of sense why Goldman is pressing very close to those incredible highs that they hit before, John, above 600 a share. This is an amazing quarter they were able to put up. I don't think that's a shock. I think you and I both expected investment banking. Each and every day that we come in here, somebody's buying somebody else in biotech. Somebody else is buying somebody else in healthcare. Somebody else is buying something in huge construction projects. We talk about it all the time here. And this is exactly why, because these guys all on the investment banking side are a piece of that whole puzzle, and they're crushing it.
Yeah, totally crushing it. And that's one of those where, like Pete said, folks, and he has been saying this for multiple quarters, that as we start to turn around and as we start to roll back some regulations and so forth, we're going to get a lot of M&A. And we've talked about it already. As soon as this week kicked off just 2 days ago, we talked about some of the biotech and some of the pharmaceutical companies that are being bought or rolled up. It's going to be a lot more of that. And Goldman already said, hey, we're seeing 24% more on the revenue on that side, on the investment banking side. So keep an eye on that. All right, Pete. I know you guys love these little clips that we have. And apparently the Washington Commanders in their locker room, Pete, have a bunch of guys jumping up and down saying they want Detroit. Yeah. So somebody put together a little video about that. And I don't know if they really want to. I know they want to be there, and they're good. And you've talked about, Daniels and all the rest of it, Pete. And he's one of the biggest wins in the draft. Mm-hmm. But let's take a look and listen to this video.
They want Detroit? Really? There he is. Who is this? AC/DC, right?
No, Black Sabbath.
Black Sabbath, even better.
Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath. Pete, that guy is a beast out of Oregon.
Probably the best tackle in football right now. Probably the very best tackle in football.
We got to drag him out into the deep and kill him.
We don't have to talk about how tough we are. We don't have to talk about how resilient we are. We live it, man. You talk about pressure, we live in pressure.
Best coach in football.
We're all supposed to be here together, man. We're destined for this. Just stay the course.
That was Aaron Glenn they showed there. That's the defensive coordinator. And let me tell you, John, my worst nightmare right now is that the offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator right now for Detroit, and I love this Detroit team. I love the coach. I mean, Coach Campbell. How do you beat that guy for his energy and his willingness to say whatever he wants to say to the guys and doesn't care what somebody else wants to say about him, right? I mean, it all started with the opening day press conference when he was biting off kneecaps. And everybody freaked out, right? They were, oh, good Lord, this guy's nuts. Well, now all of a sudden, all those same people who thought he was crazy as a loon love him. And it just shows you how funny and fickle fans can be about, oh, crap, look at this. Now, oh, Jesus, this guy's the best coach in all football. He was the best coach when they hired him, and he's still the best coach right now. And I thought it would be kind of fun, John, to take a look at what the openings look like right now in the NFL. Vrabel already took that job with the New England Patriots, right? So we've got Chicago, Dallas, Jacksonville, Las Vegas, New Orleans, and the Jets. Now, we're not going to go through all of those, but I'm just kind of looking at those, John, just trying to think now, if you're a Chicago guy, Mike McCarthy, do you like the idea of the Chicago Bears possibly hiring him after he just got released from the Dallas Cowboys?
No.
Oh.
He's not a terrible fit, Pete, but I would rather see Pete Carroll, your old buddy. Because Pete Carroll were together with the Vikings folks. I would rather see him, Pete, because I liked what he did in Seattle. I believe he had both roles, coach and GM for a while, Pete. And he built he built that franchise up to where, nobody wanted to play Seattle. It's like they were Detroit. I think he could do that in Chicago, Pete. So McCarthy, would you take him? Sure. And he'd be anybody'd be lucky to have Caleb Williams unless we've all screwed up on who he really is. And I don't think we have. I think it was just like we said about the Vikings offensive line. if it's a jailbreak, and he led the league in sacks, Pete, Caleb Williams, I think it was 67 or 68 sacks. That means you got no time to throw. Right. So you can't take advantage of his skills. I think Pete Carroll will address that better than Mike McCarthy, Pete.
So Dallas, maybe it's Deion Sanders. Jacksonville, it's probably Ben Johnson, which is probably a good fit, I think. He's the offensive coordinator at Detroit. He's been dealing with his own quarterback, obviously, Detroit, who's been absolutely magical this year. I mean, he's by far his best year, and he looks fantastic. Vegas, who knows? Maybe it's Brian Flores from the Vikings. He's the defensive coordinator, but he's kind of toxic. I'm not going to get into all that, but there's a lot of reasons why there are probably teams that will interview him. I don't know whether or not they'll hire him or not. But you've got Joe Brady. You've got, Aaron Glenn, as we talked about, the defensive coordinator, maybe going to the Jets. I think if you're going to the Jets, you almost have to get somebody who's more on the offensive coordinator side, I think. And so maybe they go with the Baltimore Ravens, offensive coordinator. He's an older guy, but that's okay, I think, in the NFL.
Or do they go with McCarthy, Pete? Do the Jets go with McCarthy?
Yeah. I don't think McCarthy would be a bad choice. I didn't even think about that till you just said it, John, but that's not bad. It's interesting to see how the coaching carousel spins, right? And now all of a sudden we're going to really start to see some of the hires because a lot of guys have already done the interview process. It's the only thing that might bother me a little bit about Detroit going in against the Commanders, John, is, your D coordinator, O coordinator flying all over the country doing these interviews. Does that kind of get in the way or not? I don't know. I mean, it happens every year. I get it. But when you're a playoff team and you got the home field advantage, you don't want to have too many distractions going on, I don't think either. Do you?
No, I don't think you want those distractions. But I'll throw another distraction your way, Pete. I think Jerry Jones buys out Belichick's contract. It's $10 million buyout, folks. Yeah. $10 million just to be able to negotiate with him to make him your coach. I think he pays that, Pete. That's chump change for Jerry these days, Pete. He makes that basically over the weekend on the interest on his money. So I think he buys out. By the way, I loved him on Landman, Pete. Jerry on Landman. That was a great episode.
That was.
Where he comes in and visits John Hamm in the hospital. Classic. But I think, Pete, Jerry Jones says, I'm going to spend this money. I'm not going to die with it. I'm going to spend it. And I'm going to get the 8-time Super Bowl champ coach that, and I'm going to let him date our cheerleaders. Because I think Belichick's kind of got an eye for the younger chicks, Pete.
That's not, you think? I'll tell you what, I don't think that's crazy at all. Matter of fact, we've heard already from Tom Brady saying, hey, look, we want him with the Las Vegas Raiders, and we're willing to buy out what he has at North Carolina, too. This could work out pretty well for North Carolina, quite frankly, because if they've got somebody in their sights outside of Belichick and they get all this money, that could be a nice payday for North Carolina as well. So that makes it pretty interesting. All right, John, how about the next one? So who is the next team in the NFL that has the best chance of turning it around the way the Washington Commanders did? Because let's think about this for just a second. In 2023, the Commanders were 4-13. It's why they got the second pick in the draft. And what did they do with it? Well, first of all, they hired Cliff Kingsbury, one of those quarterback gurus and coaches and all the rest of that. You've got Dan Quinn as the head coach. He's a defensive guy. And this year, all of a sudden, what did they do? They drafted him. Well, they finished out 12-5, and now they're going to be playing the Detroit Lions, right? So that's not such a bad turnaround in a very short piece of time with 4 wins, and now you've got 12 wins. I don't know. I'd love to go back and see, is this one of the biggest turnarounds ever or not? Because it's got to be pretty close. By the way, with Jaden Daniels, John, they're number 7 in offense, they're number 3 in rushing, and they're number 5 in points scored. I would say that one draft pick in the second pick of the draft was the most genius one of the entire draft because they got the guy they wanted, and they knew the ability that he had to be very consistent and run the ball pretty well. I don't think they wanted to run it as much as he did, but he makes it a lot different game for sure. So I just wonder, who do you think? And it's probably somebody who needs a coach, right? Is it Chicago? Is it Dallas? Is it Jacksonville? Is it the Raiders? Is it New Orleans? Is it the Jets? I don't know, but they're all looking for a coach. That tells me they had a pretty crappy year. So who do you think can make that kind of a turnaround this year?
Well, when you're picking on teams with bad records like that, I'd say the Bears.
Okay.
And I know it's a homer call, but
No.
they're two offensive linemen away, Pete, from having a great team,
Yeah.
I think.
Mhm.
And that could be free agent as well as draft, and it should be both, by the way.
Mhm.
But one of the teams that I would think could really hurt people is the LA Chargers
Mhm.
because of Harbaugh and Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, sooner or later, somebody's going to give one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL a real team around him. I know he's been to the big game, but like you said, Pete, so was Marino, and he never went back.
Yeah.
So if you want to waste a generational talent like Joe Burrow, just keep doing what you're doing, Cincinnati. But if you give that guy some pieces around him other than Chase, Pete, and his offensive side, he's okay. He does need a lineman or two as well, just like Chicago. But that defense was horrific there.
Terrible.
Pete. And, they need to address that ASAP.
Yep. Defense is their problem. Absolutely 100%. They're absolutely awful. I'm pretty sure that they already fired the defensive coordinator, so they're going to probably do something about that as well. I'm going to go with the Dallas Cowboys, and here's why. I know they had 7 wins. That's fine, right? But that's not good enough. They didn't get anywhere, and that's a problem when you've got Dak Prescott that you've put a hell of a lot of money into. You've got CeeDee Lamb. You put a hell of a lot of money into him. You've got Cooks. You've got I think a pretty damn good offensive line. Can they get better? Sure. There was enough sacks that they've got to do something else. On the defensive side, they've got a good couple of corners. They got Micah Parsons, who's basically the closest thing to Lawrence Taylor that we've seen. I don't think he's as good as Lawrence Taylor, but he's damn close. They need a running back. As I evaluate the Dallas Cowboys, tell me who their running back is. I couldn't tell you, John. I don't know who the hell it is. They were bringing back old guys and trying to run them through there. Go to Alabama. Go to in free agency. If any of those Alabama running backs are available, I'm grabbing them, especially if they're a little bit bigger. If you can give me an Alabama running back, either from Alabama or in the NFL, that's about 220, 230 pounds, and we think that he's at least on the good side of age and everything else. Let me tell you something. That's what they lack. If you look at these playoffs, these teams all have a running back. All of them. They all have a strong running back. They don't all have Derrick Henry because there's only one of them. He's the king. But there's a great running back everywhere in the NFL for the teams that are really, really good. And Dallas Cowboys this year, and I don't know, you might even be able to go back a few. You can't even name who their running backs are. And they used to be one of the very best, right? Ezekiel Elliott and all these other great running backs. Nobody. They don't have anybody right now on that roster who's a good running back.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference, especially. And these things do swing back and forth, folks, just like the market, the NFL. Oh, it's, we got to put all these rules in to make the passing game more exciting. And then the side of the ball that Pete and I played on, at least primarily on defense. Pete was a running back also, by the way. But when you're playing defense, what do you got to do if the other team's passing all the time? Got to get linebackers that run 4.4 and 4.55. Those guys don't weigh 265.
No,
they weigh 220 or 215 because they can get into the passing lane and disrupt passes. Well, they're not going to be able to stand up to King Henry, Pete. And we've seen that like last week with the Steelers, when even though they usually have a pretty stout defense, they had no answer for Henry last week. That's why he went for over 160, I think, on his own.
I think it was 186. And by the way, he might have the most lethal strong arm, freaking straight arm on players, man. I mean, he takes these guys at 220 pounds and just throws them off to the side and keeps going. He's a beast. There's only one of him, but there's a lot of guys behind him, like Gibbs and some of these other guys that are great running backs as well.
Yeah, Jamar Gibbs. I mean, all he did against the Vikes was 4 touchdowns, Pete.
Yeah, that's all.
4. Ouch.
Unreal.
All right, folks, remember, if you click that little QR code right there, you can join us in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand right there. If you scan that, you can sign up for RebelCon 2025. It's going to be fabulous. We encourage you to do that. You can also just check out what we do at marketrebellion.com/get started. And we will be back to finish out the week tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Bang.